The multiverse screamed. It wasn't something most beings could hear, but Angstrom Levy did. His fractured mind broken across countless realities and stitched back together with desperation and hate, heard the scream in the spaces between dimensions. With each new portal he opened, he clawed deeper into realms no mortal was meant to see. He sought knowledge, control, redemption. But on this day, he found something else. A glimmering rift opened above the ruins of Earth. 2149. A world long devoured by its heroes. The sky was blackened, veiled in ash. Buildings lay hollowed out like rib cages. Atop a mountain of bones stood Zombie Giant Man, still adorned in the shredded remains of his old Avengers uniform. One arm held a mechanical control gauntlet, the other, a grotesque feeding tube extending into a tank where a limbless T'Challa floated in stasis, barely alive, a sustainable food source. Levy's portal shimmered like a mirror. Hank Pym, or what was left of him, looked up. A tongue flicked from his cracked lips. His eyes gleamed with intent. A connection was made. Back in the Invincible universe, Mark Grayson, aka Invincible, was dealing with the aftermath of the Flaxen invasion, still training under Cecil and struggling to balance school, Amber, and his recent encounter with Battle Beast, which left him hospitalized and shaken. His ribs ached, his confidence even more. While flying a surveillance route over Alaska, Mark was suddenly drawn to an anomaly. A shimmering tear in the sky, swirling with green, purple, and blood-red energy. Before he could call it in, the rift imploded, but not before something dropped from it. Something wrong. A charred, twitching corpse hit the ice below. It was a superhero, or something that used to be. Its costume was mostly incinerated, but the emblem on the chest was barely legible. An M over a silver circle. Marvelman? Mark didn't recognize it. As he approached, the corpse moved, fast. A snapped arm lunged toward Mark's leg. Bite. Teeth grazed his boot. Mark reflexively punched downward, caving in the skull. It kept trying to move. Cecil immediately sent a retrieval team. Mark wasn't allowed to return home. Instead, he was quarantined for 2 days in an underground lab, while Donald, Debbie, and the Guardians of the Globe reviewed the footage. It wasn't just the corpse. More rifts had opened around the world. Something was coming. Meanwhile, on Earth 2149, Zombie Giant Man experimented with the residue of Angstrom's rift energy. He didn't want to just feed anymore. He wanted to expand the infection, carry it into new realms, create a multiversal food chain. He didn't have the power cosmic like Thor or Iron Man anymore, but he did have Reed Richards' old tech, and he still remembered how to build. In a deep vault surrounded by dismembered X-Men and mutated remnants of Skrull technology, Hank Pym constructed a dimensional beacon powered by the energy signatures left behind by Galactus. The beacon activated. In Mark's world, dimensional barriers buckled. Angstrom Levy, still alive after being presumed dead, suddenly reappeared, his mind burning with apocalyptic visions. In a rare act of fear, he tried to warn Mark. You have no idea what's coming. The hunger, it doesn't end. It evolves. And then it arrived. A second rift opened over the Pacific Ocean, splitting the clouds in a spiral vortex. From it poured 3 streaks of fire, crashing into the sea with unimaginable force. Ships were vaporized, the water churned. Emerging from the tidal wave were Zombie Iron Man, Zombie Wolverine, and Zombie Giant Man, riding the broken hull of a helicarrier like a surfboard. They had arrived. Cecil ordered DEFCON 1. Every surviving Guardian was mobilized. Even Omni-Man, hiding on a distant moon, felt the rupture and turned his head in concern. In a darkened chamber of the Pentagon, Mark looked at the screen. The corpses walked, they flew, they fed. "Who are they?" he asked. Cecil's eyes were grave. "They used to be heroes, in a world that starved." The first major city fell within hours. Cameras captured grotesque silhouettes descending from the sky. Cosmic enhanced zombies that moved faster than any plane tore through any defense. Zombie Wolverine landed in a crowded train station, claws erupting through flesh, bones snapping as infected civilians screamed in terror. Zombie Iron Man, his arc reactor corrupted, fired off unstable repulsor blasts, leveling towers just to trap humans for easy consumption. But the worst of them hovered above the chaos. Giant Man, massive, rotting, cloaked in flame and hunger. From his shoulder he deployed seed spores, clusters of modified OZ virus, enhanced by necrotic tissue from Galactus. These spores burst in midair, infecting masses below in seconds. Some victims mutated immediately. Others transformed more slowly, writhing as the virus restructured them into malformed cannibals. In the GDA underground base, Cecil briefed the remaining Guardians. Mark stood beside Adam Eve, whose hands shook just slightly. They had seen alien invasions, world-ending threats, but this was something else. "These aren't invaders looking to conquer," Cecil said, flipping through drone footage showing burning cities. "They're a virus, a sentient one." Robot interjected. "Analysis suggests the infection is bloodborne, but highly adaptable. Initial victims include Tech Jacket, Brit, and the Shapesmith. All lost. They turned within minutes." Mark gritted his teeth. "What about Omni-Man?" Cecil frowned. "No contact. If he's still alive, he's hiding." As global communication collapsed, the core group, Mark, Eve, Cecil, Duplicate, Robot, and Black Samson, evacuated to Fort Stronghold, a classified facility equipped with alien tech. But they weren't alone. That night, Angstrom Levy forced his way in through a rift, bloodied, panicked, and rambling about the hive mind of decay, about Giant Man's evolving plan. "He's experimenting," Levy hissed. "He wants to infect Viltrumite DNA. You're the key." He pointed directly at Mark. "Your cells are stable, unrottable. If he succeeds, you won't just become a zombie. You'll become the first immortal host." Meanwhile, deep beneath the wreckage of Paris, Giant Man's lab buzzed with horrific machinery. Several Flaxen warriors were chained in glowing containment units, screaming as their DNA was slowly extracted and combined with the viral strain. The results were monstrous. On the tables were 3 failed prototypes, a hulking hybrid of Thor and Flaxen DNA. A broken mimic of Jean Grey who telekinetically flayed herself in madness, and a child-sized creature with Mark's face, cloned from residue left behind when he punched a drone too hard. Giant Man observed everything, whispering to himself. Soon, one bite, one virus, one empire of hunger. Back in the field, Invincible and Adam Eve led a raid to extract survivors in Chicago. What they found was a hellscape, roads crawling with decaying civilians, their mouths split wide, whispering in unison. So hungry. The team encountered a zombified Tech Jacket, who had fused parts of his armor with bone and flesh. Mark fought him mid-air in a battle that took down entire buildings. Eve tried to reach out to his humanity, but was nearly bitten. It was Duplicate who sacrificed herself to stop him, creating dozens of clones to drag him down and explode. Back in Fort Stronghold, Robot made a grim discovery. Monster Girl, presumed dead, had been captured by Giant Man. Live footage showed her locked in a chamber, her transformation cycle being exploited to produce endless tissue, regeneration for viral experimentation. Enraged, Mark demanded a rescue mission, but Cecil refused. We don't even know where he is. That night, Mark left on his own. He flew through the broken sky, over burning forests, broken cities, and oceans littered with ships. The world felt empty now, until he found him. Giant Man stood at the ruins of the Statue of Liberty, now mutated into a totem of flesh and stone. Around him were the remains of heroes, Battle Beast's head, the Immortal's torso, and what looked like a melted Mauler twin. All experiments, all failures. Mark landed, fists clenched. "You think you can turn me into one of you?" he growled. Giant Man smiled, skin sloughing from his jawline. "Not one of us. Better. You'll be the father of the next evolution, the first eternal zombie." Mark awoke buried under rubble, his ears ringing, lungs burning, and limbs aching with every movement. He'd failed. Giant Man's trap had worked. Their battle left New York in ruins, or what remained of it anyway. The few civilians left had either been infected or slaughtered, but something else haunted Mark now, a creeping itch in his veins. His vision flickered, and for a split second the world shimmered in a haze of red and black. Was it exhaustion? Or was Giant Man right? He leapt skyward, shaking off the dread. He couldn't afford to fall. Not yet. Back at Fort Stronghold, Eve, Robot, and a now deeply traumatized Cecil watched helplessly as the final defense lines across Europe crumbled. The zombie Fantastic Four, led by Johnny Storm, his flames black and acidic, had breached Berlin. Giant Man's spores were spreading into space itself. But there was one last hope. Angstrom Levy returned. Not alone this time. From another timeline, one where the Marvel Zombies had been defeated. He brought survivors. Blade, a symbiote-merged Moon. Knight and the zombified but still conscious head of Deadpool, kept alive in a containment cube. Blade wasted no time. "I've killed gods, vampires, but these bastards," he smiled grimly. "They're just dumb enough to believe they're immortal." Mark returned, barely holding himself together. The hunger inside him was real, but it hadn't overtaken him yet. Eve noticed something glowing faintly on his neck, some kind of cosmic mark, slowly spreading. Cecil spoke up. "We think Giant Man is using you as a living beacon. He seeded you with a fragment of Galactus' essence. That's why they're closing in. Your body is calling them." Mark's eyes widened. "So I'm a homing device?" "No," said Robot. "You're the key to destroying them." The plan. They'd use Mark as bait, drawing the infected toward Copi, a habitable world near a black hole. Once the horde followed, Robot would collapse the planet's moon into the black hole, sucking the entire infected fleet with it, but only if Mark could keep them distracted long enough. There was one catch. He might not survive the pull. He agreed anyway. The Battle of Copi. The final stand began on the fertile plains of Copi, under blood-red skies. Giant Man arrived first, swollen with more virus than flesh, wielding a staff made from Galactus' spine. Behind him, the zombified X-Men, the Sentry, and Dark Phoenix floated like death angels. Mark stood between them and the reactor core. His Viltrumite blood burned in protest. Eve, refusing to let him go alone, stood beside him, forming a barrier dome around the core. "You always were too good to die," she whispered. "Then help me prove it." The fight erupted in waves. Blade and Moon Knight tag-teamed zombified versions of Cyclops and Rogue. Eve fought Phoenix in a duel of cosmic constructs, nearly losing her arm in the process. Mark took on Giant Man alone. Their duel tore through continents. Giant Man was more than a zombie. He was a god of rot now. He flung planets at Mark, summoned black bile from the sky, and laughed through a shattered jaw as he struck. Mark tapped into every ounce of his power. When Giant Man tried to bite him, Mark shoved Deadpool's head into his mouth. Chew on something really annoying. The explosion of energy from the containment cube burned half of Giant Man's face off, but the black hole was forming. The plan was working. Giant Man, bleeding and burning, lunged one last time. And Eve caught him. "Mark," she said softly, "finish it." With a scream that cracked the sky, Mark punched straight through Giant Man's chest, ripping out the Galactus fragment and letting the void consume him. Back at Fort Stronghold, all was quiet. Cecil's monitors showed nothing. The virus was gone. Mark lay on a field, barely breathing, Eve beside him. Copi, though scarred, had survived. "I'm not turning," Mark whispered. "I thought I would." "You're stronger than it," Eve said. "No." He closed his eyes. "I just had something to fight for." In the silence of deep space, a dim green glow pulsed in the black hole. Inside, a twisted version of Thanos, already zombified before Galactus's death, hovered, still holding the Infinity Gauntlet. New universe, new hunger. His smile grew, revealing rotted teeth behind cracked, golden armor. The black hole was gone. So was Giant Man, the zombified Phoenix, and the Marvel Zombie Plague, for now. But the sky over Copi remained bruised. The fields where the battle had raged were littered with craters and splintered bones. A once pristine planet had been turned into a graveyard of gods. Mark sat beneath the twisted remains of what had once been a Ravager ship. His knuckles were still raw, caked with blood, his, Giant Man's, and others he didn't even remember hitting. Eve approached, her arm in a sling made of nanofiber vines she'd grown herself. She crouched next to him. "You did it," she said softly. Mark didn't respond. His Osiris eyes were on his hands, still trembling. "Did I?" "They're gone, Mark," he shook his head. "Not all of them. I still feel something. Like they infected more than just my body. They infected everything. Hope, faith, the idea that things can ever go back to normal." Eve looked away. She knew he wasn't wrong. At Fort Stronghold, Cecil, grim-faced and older than he'd been a week ago, looked over the casualty reports. Duplicate, Monster Girl, Black Samson, hundreds of UN soldiers, countless civilians. Angstrom Levy entered silently. His dimensional device cracked and sparking on his wrist. "The tears between universes haven't stopped," he said. "They're widening." Cecil stood up. "How bad?" Levy hesitated. "Bad enough that something came through. From the future. Or another future, maybe." He opened a portal. A young woman in a tattered cloak stepped through. Her hair was dark, her skin pale and scarred. "I'm Iris McHenry," she said. "And I think I know where the next threat is coming from." Cecil blinked. "You're Bryce's daughter." She nodded. Her eyes were cold steel. "And I've been to the timeline where Thanos wins, elsewhere, in a universe-dying zombie." Thanos stood before a destroyed Watcher, having ripped his head from his shoulders and drained him of cosmic memory. The Infinity Gauntlet, once dulled by rot, now burned with unfiltered celestial power. "All universes die," he said. "I just helped them understand why." Behind him were the reanimated corpses of Celestials, floating like monuments of death, impaled by chunks of Galactus's essence and corrupted Silver Surfer boards. "I smell resistance," he growled, Earth still clinging to life. He turned toward a map of dimensional veins. One shone brighter than the rest, Mark's Earth. "So be it." With a flick of his fingers, He tore a hole in reality wide enough for entire worlds to fall through. Back on Copi, Mark met Iris for the first time that evening. The orange glow of two suns behind them. "You look like him," he said. "Bryce." Iris nodded, studying him. "And you don't look like the guy from the timelines that lose. That's why I'm here." She dropped a hologram disc on the ground. It activated, showing an entire planetary system consumed by rot, a galaxy where no light remained. "He's coming, and the Marvel Zombies were just the start." Mark clenched his fists. "Then we stop him." "You won't do it alone." From the portal behind Iris stepped Zarda, the last Squadron Supreme member of her universe. Then Kid Loki, his eyes glowing with borrowed Chronos power. Then a mutated Peter Parker, half spider, half symbiote, but fully aware. Each one a survivor from a doomed multiverse. Final scene. Cecil gathers Mark, Eve, Iris, and the other dimensional warriors. "We're not just defending one Earth anymore," he said. "We're defending all of them." Mark put on his new suit, darker, reinforced with alien alloys recovered from nowhere, etched with Viltrumite symbols, and a sliver of the power cosmic. "No more warnings," he said. "Next time, we bury Thanos." The multiverse had not healed. It merely held its breath. Planet E9, 187, Earth of Ash. A dying world spun silently in the shadows of a crimson nebula. Once a bustling Earth, in universe E987. Now it was nothing more than blackened ruins. Cityscapes scorched to bone. Oceans evaporated. Silence reigned, except for the whisper of wind blowing across charred husks of what once were heroes. At the center of it all stood a monument of horror. Zombie Thanos, the Mad Titan resurrected, rebuilt, and recharged by the power cosmic, now fused with necrotic essence from Earth 2149. On his hand, a twisted mockery of the Infinity Gauntlet, half flesh, half metal, studded with stones pulsating with infection rather than infinity. He stood over the skull of the Watcher, freshly taken, its all-seeing eyes still glowing dimly with fading multiversal memory. Thanos had consumed its knowledge, learned every surviving world, every possibility, every what if. He would erase them all. Behind him hovered the bloom, a moon-sized corpse flower of corrupted cosmic tissue and celestial bone. It traveled between dimensions like a seed on black wind, leaving behind only hunger and void. "I've seen universes collapse out of boredom," Thanos muttered. "Let's see how they scream." Earth, 2025, Mark's universe. Stronghold Black Site Arctic Circle. Mark Grayson, Invincible, slammed his fist into a reinforced training dummy, pulverizing it into slag. Sweat poured down his back. His new suit clung to him, lined with Viltrumite muscle fabric, but it felt heavier than usual. He wasn't training to get stronger. He was training to forget. Behind him, Iris McHenry watched silently, holding a small locket around her neck. Her father's, Bryce's. She never knew him well, but the multiverse remembered what he stood for. A man who picked up a gun out of anger, then never put it down, until he gave his life to something greater. "You keep breaking those," Iris said. "They keep breaking too easily." "You're scared." Mark turned, his jaw clenched. "I'm angry." Same thing. Before he could retort, an emergency siren blared. Cecil's hologram flickered on in the middle of the chamber. "We have a situation. We lost contact with Universe 491. 2 billion lives, gone, in less than 3 minutes. Mark's brow furrowed. What could do that? The screen changed. Grainy security footage from an alternate Earth. It showed zombie Thanos arriving through a black hole, surrounded by infected cosmic beings, including an undead Nova Corps detachment and a decaying Silver Surfer, spewing corrosive starlight, and then the bloom descended. This wasn't a war, Cecil said. It was a harvest on the edge of reality. The faded spire, Angstrom Levy stared into the multiverse through a crack in space-time, eyes sunken, flesh marked with scars from too many universes. He was trying to seal the rift, but what he saw instead was the bloom, spreading spores of death across timelines. He stepped back from the crack. "He's not just feeding," Levy whispered. "He's planting." A skeletal hand reached out from behind the veil. Levy turned and screamed, "Elsewhere." Thanos speaks to the bloom. On the outer hull of the bloom, Thanos stood alone, watching the glowing threads of new universes being born in the cosmic loom. "A multiverse that keeps giving birth to itself," he said. "Like a snake that refuses to die." He clenched the wrought gauntlet. Time to cut off its head. He turned to his army. Infected fragments of former heroes. Zombie Thor, wielding Mjolnir, dripping with black ichor. Black Bolt, jaw sealed shut by rot, but his scream now reduced planets to gray mulch. They were ready. "Next world," Thanos said, "is one they care about." He pointed to the map. "Send them to Mark Grayson's Earth." The world was still asleep when the sky tore open. A fracture in the clouds above the Pacific Ocean birthed a swirling vortex of blackened starlight. From it emerged the bloom, its surface pulsing with necrotic energy, its roots dragging through reality like a rake through silk. Where they touched atmosphere, birds fell dead, oceans churned with bile, and plants turned to stone. The world didn't even know what it was looking at, but Cecil did. In the underground war room, he barked into a secure line. "Activate all contingency squads. Call in Adam Eve, Robot, Monster Girl, everyone. We're looking at a cosmic scale extinction event." He turned to Mark's location on the satellite feed. "Wake him up." Invincible's return. Mark, still bruised from his last encounter, flew over the Pacific like a comet. Iris McHenry rode behind him, in a glider constructed from dimensional shielding, one of the only things that might survive contact with the infected zone. As they approached the bloom, they passed wreckage, oil tankers fused into bone, whales floating dead in the air like balloons full of rot. One of them opened an eye, and it was human. "Don't look at it," Iris whispered, half to herself. "It's watching us?" Mark asked. "No," she said, "it's listening." They landed on a ruined aircraft carrier, where a forward base had been set up. A crackling energy field barely kept the corrupted atmosphere out. Eve and Robot met them, visibly shaken. "We lost Monster Girl," Robot said. "To the infection." "No, she joined them." First contact. The Black Nova. From the belly of the bloom came its first herald, Zombie Nova, once Richard Rider, now a living missile of cosmic plague. He slammed into the ground in Manila, vaporizing half the city in a blast of corrupted Nova force. Civilians turned instantly. Their screams echoed across radios as dozens of countries lost communication. Mark intercepted Nova in the ruins of the city. "I don't care who you were," Mark growled. "You're not him anymore." Nova smiled, skin barely clinging to his face. "That's what I said to myself the moment I tasted eternity." The fight was brutal. Nova's decayed body moved faster than expected, exploding with supernova bursts that tore the air. Mark took a hit to the ribs that shattered them. He responded with a Viltrumite war punch, cracking Nova's skull open and sending the corpse into the sea. But Nova didn't die. He regrew like mold. Only when Eve swooped in and wrapped him in a solar prison did they contain him long enough to analyze. The infection of the gods. Meanwhile, on the moon, a dimensional pocket ripped open, and out stepped Zombie Thor, dragging the remains of Heimdall behind him. The Bifrost had been used, contaminated. A council of cosmic observers, Uatu's surviving kin, watched in terror from the ruins of nowhere. One of them finally whispered, "He's reached the divine. Earth is no longer the end goal." The massacre at Olympus Mons on Mars. The coalition of planets launched a desperate attack on the Bloom. Viltrumites, Thraxans, and even the Unipens joined forces. Their warships struck the Bloom with antimatter beams and singularity bombs. It was a slaughter. The Bloom absorbed the attacks, mutated the corpses, and spat them back. One by one, the survivors fell, reanimated by black spores, and twisted into mockeries of their races. In the aftermath, zombie Thanos stood alone on the red dust plains, holding a Viltrumite skull in one hand. Mark Grayson, I wonder how loud you'll scream when your father rises. Mark's decision. In Earth orbit, Cecil's backup plan was revealed. A time anchor, reverse engineered from Angstrom's dimensional device. And Watcher tech. "We can reverse this," he told Mark. "Send you two before the Bloom's first appearance." "No," Iris interrupted. "If he jumps, Thanos might follow him backward. Then all timelines collapse. You want a reset? Thanos wants everything reset to rot." Mark stood silent, then clenched his fists. "No more resets." "What then?" Eve asked. He looked toward the Bloom, its roots now brushing the upper atmosphere. "We go in." The Bloom loomed above Earth like an infected god. Its gnarled tendrils choked out the sun, its core glowing with sickly, celestial light. From a distance, it looked like a flower. Up close, it was a wound in space itself, and Mark Grayson was about to fly straight into it, descent into death. The strike team, Invincible, Adam Eve, Iris, McHenry, Robot, Zarda, Symbiote. Peter Parker, Kid Loki, and the fragmented will of Silver Surfer plunged through the corrupted atmosphere in dimension-hardened suits, their bodies shielded by a mix of magic, tech, and pure force of will. They breached the outer membrane of the Bloom, like antibodies entering a dying body. Inside, gravity collapsed, time bled, and reality bent. The walls pulsed with veins. Bones floated in clusters. Echoes of alternate Earths flickered in and out. Universes that were, could be, and should never have been. And then they heard it. "You came to prune the rot," a voice echoed. "You walked into the root." The Bloom's heart. The chamber of will. They landed in the central chamber where a throne of shifting bones stood. Upon it sat zombie Thanos, but changed. His power had merged with the Bloom. He was no longer a being. He was a biome. The gauntlet had merged with his flesh, and his skull leaked strands of time thread and sinew. Flanking him were the Revenants. Zombie Odin, wielding a corrupted Gungnir made of Nidhogg's remains. Zombie Giant Man, grotesquely large, with thousands of tiny infected crawling across his skin like lice. And the Rot Child, a physical manifestation of the Bloom's will, an unborn god, part celestial, part void, part watcher. "This is the true power," Thanos rumbled, "not to destroy life, to make it need you." The final battle. The strike team unleashed everything. Adam Eve transmuted corrupted biomass into raw iron, slicing off Giant Man's arm. Kid Loki summoned a bifurcated Mjolnir, dragging zombie Odin into a magic snare forged from the fangs of Fenrir. Symbiote Peter Parker merged the suit with Surfer's mind, creating a new form. The cosmic arachnid, webs made of neutron matter and galactic stardust. Robot launched himself into Thanos' exposed ribcage, setting off a self-replicating anti-necrotic bomb. Still, it wasn't enough. Thanos stood, gauntlet flickering. You think pain is your weapon? I've become pain. He slammed the gauntlet into the ground. The bloom awoke fully. Tendrils lashed, pulling heroes into darkness. Zarda was torn in half. Kid Loki was infected mid-spell and exploded in a burst of godlight. Symbiote Peter screamed as the hive mind tried to invade his brain. The choice only Mark, Eve, and Iris remained. As the world trembled, Iris stepped forward. The locket Bryce had given her, imbued with spirit energy, began to glow. Bryce's final remnants reached out through the veil. Never pick up a gun out of anger. Iris closed her eyes. Because you'll never put it down. She opened the locket. A shockwave of pure human willpower erupted, freezing the bloom for a moment. Thanos roared. Mark turned to Eve. You have to take the shot. It'll kill you. Better me than everyone else. Eve nodded and shattered the reactor powering Mark's suit. The combined force of her reality-warping powers and his Viltrumite DNA overloaded into a chain reaction quantum implosion. Mark screamed as the bloom folded in on itself, collapsing into a white singularity. Earth survived, barely. The bloom was gone. The dead were quiet. The sky was blue for the first time in weeks. Iris, standing at Mark's grave, clutched the locket. Behind her, a new memorial wall was being built, honoring the fallen multiverse defenders. Robot was rebuilding. Eve was off-world, guarding time fissures that remained unstable. Post-credit scene, the Garden of Death. A scorched wasteland. In the center, a lone figure limped across the dark sand. Zombie Thanos, weakened, but alive. A voice echoed behind him. You made a mess of things. From the shadows stepped zombie Reed Richards, having returned from the Ultimate Universe, now rebuilt and watching. Let's talk, before the next multiverse blooms.